Hello, and you're very welcome to the JMac podcast. I'm John Mann. Of course, the podcast brought to you by yourgarage.com. Use the code JMac podcast, get 50% off on the website. Loads up here, dropping just in every township, so get your hands on it. And today I'm joined by well-renowned GAA coach Colm Nally to talk about, of course, his new book, Gameful Learning Ideas for Football Coaches of All Teams. Because I've got my hands on a copy of it, so really looking forward to getting stuck into it properly and chatting to Colm today. How are you keeping, Colm?
Not a bad, John. Thanks very much for the invite.
No problem at all. No problem at all. It's Monday, start of the week. So how did your Monday go?
Oh, grand. Just busy in work there today, So there's never a dull moment where in my job. So it's Mondays are always busy days after the weekend and getting in there and facing the new rush, and then preparing for the week ahead in terms of training and stuff like that. So always plenty to do on a Monday.
Oh yeah, big time, big time. Start of a new week, new beginnings, new challenges, no doubt. Colm, I suppose obviously we can touch on obviously to the work of art you've produced, your latest book, as we were talking off there, your third book. So I'll just put it on screen for viewers there. Of course, it's available now, and obviously get in touch with Colm if you're looking for a copy. Of course, it's, as I said, the all new Gameful Learning Ideas for Football Coaches of All Teams by the great Colm Nally. So Colm, what was the thinking behind this one?
Yeah, well, it's like everything else. Like I would do some tutoring for Leinster Council, and I've been tutoring for Leinster for over 20 years now. So when you give a coaching course, you could be doing the technical proficiency module or the tactical play and team plays module, and without doubt, when you finish the session, people always come up to you and say, "Have you any drills? Have you got any things you can give us like that?" So the ideas came from them really, like that there's not a lot of resources out there. So I would always kind of log and keep all my sessions. So I just decided, see can I put them in some sort of book format and see how it went. And thankfully, like there seems to be a huge interest and a huge market in it. Now, this is the third one, and what I try to do is kind of align it with the sort of coach education program out there, because it's broke down into 8 different modules: your physical fitness ones, your tactical plays, team play, stuff like that. So I try to kind of align it with that and give coaches some ideas of some of the activities that you can do along them sort of recommended modules. But it's probably it's probably a better one. Like it's like when you look back on where you started, you kind of say, "Jesus, did I really put that out?" But it's evolved over the 6 years now that I've been doing them, and really happy with this one. I got it kind of I linked up with a professional graphic designer and sort of put a bigger effort into the look of it and how it would flow and things like that. So hoping that it'll go down well, and so far so good. It's flying out the door really at the moment.
Can't complain. I suppose, Colm, how much time goes into creating a book like this? Obviously, when you're reading through it, the attention to detail is incredible, and all the drills and skills and everything you put into it. So, how much, I suppose, time and effort goes into this book?
Well, that book now would be about 6 months in the making from start to finish. Okay. Now, I'd have a lot of, like as I said, I'd be logging all my sessions and things like that. And it's just looking back on them, you're kind of saying which would be more suitable. Look, the thing about it, John, like I kind of refer in the intro in the book that like it's coaching pie, and this book kind of sometimes reluctant even to call it a coaching book because it's only one part of what coaching really is. But before you coach, and on the football field, before you put your pair of boots on and walk out on the football field, you have to have something to coach, right? So that's where this book comes in. It just gives you a few ideas of kind of like how to do some tackling activities, some attacking activities, stuff like that. So that's the first thing. But like that's only one part of coaching. Like everybody knows that the rest of it is building rapport, having knowledge, getting on with your players, making an environment for fellas to be or girls to be comfortable in learning and enjoying themselves. So again, like the reason I produced this is you need something to coach for. So that this is only part of it. Like there's lots of other bits to go with it. But like people, I kind of, how would you put it? I won't say specialize, but I sort of deal in content. So all my stuff that I would share is just content. I don't really tell people how to coach or what to coach. I only want to help people with ideas of some activities, because you have your own style, I have my own style, you build your own connections, things like that. And people are coaching boys, girls, men, women, different age groups and that. So, just give them a few ideas, but it's still a lot more to be added to that, if you get me, in terms of build, your tactics, your knowledge of the game, how you get on with people, your principles, your beliefs. It's very difficult to put the likes of that in a book, that way, because they're all bespoke to you and me.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's all very much, I suppose, relevant in this current state of affairs. And obviously, every manager, every coach around Ireland and ever, I suppose, Colm, is trying to obviously look for that extra inch, that extra mile every time. And I suppose, obviously, like it is tailored towards your coaches, your managers, the team. So it will be so beneficial.
Oh, look, that's what you hope. And so far, like, you're getting a lot of feedback from people. Love ideas, and like what I try to do is, over the time is, right, like the size of this even and the layout of it. It means that if you're caught in work, right, or if you're you're rushing down to get to a session and you haven't got time to plan your session, because session plan is vital. You might be able to just whip a warm up out of a tackling exercise and then a game, and before you know, you have your session done with little or no planning that has a bit of relevance. Now, the way it's gone, it depends obviously who you're working with and what group you're working with. Like, so you have your 4 aspects, the 4 pillars of preparation for players would be your technical, your tactical, your physical, and your mental. So it depends where you're at the moment in there. Like, I mean, if you're coaching elite teams, in my opinion, you should be focusing on your sort of tactical and your mental element. They're the most 2 important of them pillars if you're coaching a sort of an elite team. But if you're coaching an underage team, it could be your technical and your mental. If you're coaching in early season, it could be your physical fitness work, and so I'm trying to encompass a lot of that in the book. And fellas know, and coaches know where they are on their journey with their team, if you get me. So they know exactly what they need to do, and it just helps that you're hoping. It helps teams plan and helps coaches plan. And if they're not able to plan, it helps them kind of get, because we've all been in there, that soldier where you're cut late in work and you haven't had time to plan, and you've got 30 kids waiting for you down below, and if you're not ready, they'll see through you straight away. They'll know that you're only winging this.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Colm. Preparation and timing is key in every walk of life, and I suppose obviously that's what a lot of people can use it for. Like, it's just an outlet, a go-to manual. I suppose when you are maybe, trying to beat traffic or stuck in traffic, we see everyone's life is so busy these days, Colm. So like it is such an essential resource for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's the kind of idea behind it. And again, like, I would have, how would you put it, probably road tested it a few times, especially with my own club and stuff like that, kind of asking coaches what do they need, and you're kind of doing little vox pops. You're hearing like what pressures fellas are under, and coaches, like, you have things like no space in the pitch. You go down and you've got 30 kids, but you've only got a corner of the field. Things like that. What can I do? What can I what sort of games or activities can I come up that I can keep everyone interested? You have people that might feel that they're not improving technically. So what exercises can I do in terms of tackling and high fielding and things like that? So it's kind of just trying to amass all them things together and give fellas some ideas for when they're planning on, or even conducting their sessions.
Absolutely. I suppose obviously, like we see in the modern game these days, and obviously people trying to look for new ideas constantly. And I suppose, like, is there much kind of competition with these books at this current minute of time, Colm?
I don't think so. Look, here's what I feel now, right? I mean, like, so the most recent game that was sort of everybody was impressed about was Armagh and Derry. And I feel now, looking at that match, they were 2 wonderfully coached teams. Right, fascinating to watch. You knew that everybody they're trying to think, they're trying to anticipate each other's moves, and although they had a fair idea of sort of what each team was going to do, you can have them so well coached, and these coaches are a credit to all the people involved. But game still hinges on who makes the less mistakes, right? In my opinion, and that could be anything from wayward kick passing, from bad decisions in terms of high balls and stuff like that, from just bad execution in front of the goals, all that sort of stuff. So they're all technical mistakes. So there's still lots of room for improving the skills. I remember, like, talking to numerous people, indeed witnessing myself in the Dublin team, and like, they're still there today, but they focus so much on the skills of the game, and their feelings is if they get the skills right, the mistakes are less. So you can have all the tactics in the world you want, and you can have all that in the world, but if your technical skills are letting you down under pressure, well then, the tactics go out the window. So they put an awful lot of emphasis on technical skills. So you watch any game over the rest of the summer, it'll be the team that makes the less mistakes is the team that's going to win. I know that sounds obvious, but when you trace it back to a couple of points here or there, that can be traced back to just a technical error, So the skills are still the most important part for me in the game. And you can have all the books and the resources and all you want, but sometimes the basics are the brilliant basics, as we like to call them, are what's the difference.
Absolutely, Colm. So, last thing on the book is, where can people get the book? How can people find it and get their hands on it?
Just through to my social medias, like, and I have a website there, just CN Training Manual, gmail.com. There's a bounce back mail there telling everybody how to get it, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to access to it, so just through the socials or indeed that email, and people will get a bounce back. And look, we do it ourselves. It's kind of myself and my wife and the family here. We just do it as a sort of self publication, because it's the best way to do it, because you don't want it too big, you don't want it to go out there. I only get a set amount of copies of them and get them out, because you don't want it's not about that. It's just about kind of sharing a bit of knowledge and trying to help people along the way. It's not about mass producing stuff and getting it out like that. There is coaching manuals and that out there through the Ulster Council, the Leinster Council and stuff like that, but people just seem to be reluctant to go looking for them, really. So you're just trying to make it as easy as possible for people to get something different, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the book once again. So very, very interesting stuff. If people want to get their hands on them, get in touch with Colm. So Colm, I have to ask about obviously the current state of affairs. Obviously, we're into the All Ireland series now, and all the provincial finals are done and dusted. I suppose one good provincial final out of 4 provincial finals in bad. But so, what's your thoughts on the game at the minute?
Well, I'd be always a fan of the provincials. I know people don't really. They're always looking at the heavy defeats in the final. But I got to 2 Leinster finals when I was involved with Meath, coaching Meath, and we suffered 2 heavy defeats to Dublin. But I still wouldn't trade them, because you're only going to learn by playing the likes of the Dubs in Leinster finals. You're only going to improve. And we thought at one stage we were on an upward curve. Not going to be sort of where they were at the moment, but you learn so much from playing them. You learn so much from being there. They take it very, very serious, and they pay the respect that it deserves. Now, look, Kildare ran them very, very close this year, so that was a decent match. The rest of the championship was really, really competitive. It's just that Leinster final. Now, I witnessed what I was at Loud in Dublin match, and as I said, I know what the lads were going through compared to when I think back at their time. But what happens there, John, in my opinion, is like county like Loud, and indeed the time I was with Meath there, like the hype grabs you. The hype grabs you. We're coming back. We're getting better, and it's very, very hard not to fall into that hype. And you try your best not to, but it's inevitable. It's everywhere. Like the county of Louth was red and white for the 2 weeks prior to the Leinster final. And I think maybe the boys probably went in thinking, look, we are improving, we can have a chance. But when Dublin get to the Leinster final, that's always their ramp-up phase. Such like the team they named, the changes they made just before throw-in meant that they meant business, and they just attacked Louth from the off everywhere, from breaking balls to just turning them and running at them, and really putting them on the back foot straight away, not giving them a second to think, and putting huge pressure on them. So massive learning curve for that. You go to the Connacht Championship, like you have Roscommon, Mayo, and Galway, like 3 really good teams, and like we got a really couple of good games out of that. I know the Louth boys would have loved, they would not trade that position in the Leinster final, even though they didn't get the performance they want, but that meant so much to them. Armagh are chasing that elusive Ulster title since over the last 15 years. It means an awful lot to them, right? I think when the sort of, I say the mid core teams get into the provincial finals, it means an awful lot to them. It gives them something tangible to work from, and you get a good, you get a good grounding of what's expected for you. So I would be a big fan of them. But look, you're getting into the business end of it now, and it's going to be. We've seen already some of the games have been brilliant, like the Mayo Kerry game. I caught most of that, and like that looked a tremendous game. And I haven't looked back at the other ones yet, which I will. But like there's great games coming up, and Donegal are getting a chance to sort of get a bit of credibility back in the bank. We all know they're a really good team. Clare are difficult to beat down there, so maybe they're getting a good few weeks together to bounce back. So who knows? So I mean, it's a great competition for teams to get to salvage something from the year. And indeed, the Tatters Cup is really shown up to some really good matches too. And by the looks of things, a lot of teams have embraced it, which is very, very important. I'd imagine like the Cavan boys are really focused on winning that, because I would know a few of them lads, and talking to them last year, they really thought like they had everything were off to a tee tactically. They were well set. But just goes back to my earlier point, just a classic championship match and between them and Westmeath last year. So they've seen what it meant to Westmeath. I've heard some Westmeath players and indeed management say that the young people of Westmeath thought they won the All Ireland. So that can only inspire the kids of there. So I think Cavan want a bit of that, and I think Cavan have been really, really good this last couple of years, consistent. So another trophy in the background for them will kind of be a big step in their sort of progression. So teams are really embracing the competitions at the moment. You only had to look at Sligo and Kildare the other day. Great match, really, really good match. And that's going to give Sligo a huge sort of belief, huge shot in the arm. So these competitions, really, really good, really hot up. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I suppose like listening to you, and obviously I think maybe Irish people will openly be given out. So I suppose your outlook on things are very positive.
Oh yeah, I'd always look at it like, number one, right? I'm a fan of the game, right? And look, even in the worst games you see, or in terms of defensive games, right? You still see loads of high quality skills. You still see loads of initiative being used in terms of tactics and stuff like that, right? So that's really enjoyable. But for me, it's all about the players, and the players are enjoying it. Players want to play at this level, right? Majority of them do want to play at this level. They want to progress. They want to get better. And the only way you do that is by playing constantly and getting loads of games, getting meaningful games. So these, hopefully, they will remain meaningful, right? But I do think that the players are embracing, because ultimately, right, there's huge feedback all the way down through the years about you only have to look at sort of club scene, how the junior, intermediate, senior system works. It does work, and it always has worked. Now, we're not at that at county yet, but I mean, the carrot to get into the All-Ireland series by winning the Tatters Cup is massive. Like, it works in every other code, in rugby and in soccer, where you have a secondary competition. So I can't see why it won't work in this, and it gives great. Some team always comes out of the blue and gets a great run, and it's just a great shot in the arm, great shot in the arm for the supporters, great shot in the arm for the people that are involved in these teams all down the years to get to Croke Park or to get to a final and stuff like that. So I think they're great ideas, yeah.
I suppose, Colm, the Kerry Mayo game on Saturday there, I was watching the highlights back for yesterday, and I just think, like, obviously from your coaching hat on and watching games on, I think there's one man probably speaking on everyone's lips at the minute, David Clifford. Like, some of the points he was kicking on Saturday were just remarkable. I think he kicked the point from the 45-yard line, just strode it over. Like, he's just such a remarkable talent. It was a great game of ball, but that man just keeps standing out.
He's tremendous, and one of the we went to see the club semi-final between them and Castletown in Meath. That was played down in Laois. My youngest son wanted to go down to see him in club, and that's the for me, that's I love looking at the top class players when they go back to the club and what it means to them. And him and his brother were excellent that day, right? But they're great sportsmen, right? That's like they understand. Their game awareness is brilliant, but they understand their standing in the game in terms of, look, David Clifford goes out, he's going to be man marked, he's going to get a little bit of extra stuff, right? Well able understands the whole concept of that, right? But for me, like, I think sometimes we have to lower the bar in when you're playing against the likes of David Clifford. And what I mean by that is, you can't expect, I don't care who you are, it's going to be very difficult for you to keep them scoreless, right? So sometimes you need to say to your defender or defenders, we're not looking for you to keep them scoreless, but if you can keep the score down, that's a success. And I think like that certainly happened, I think, on Sunday in Mayo, like, I mean, where the lads didn't keep him scoreless, right? But they definitely kind of had him marshalled as well as you can marshal. And to me, that's the best way to do it, really. Like, so just go out and have a good game of football, see what you can do. Like, at this stage, he's 24 or 25. You know that he buys a dummy before he shoots. You know that he buys leverage by leaning into you. He's that big. You know that he has a snapshot. That if you give him any degree of separation, he can pull the trigger. You know that he can, he'll jink the ball one way and go the other way, and he only needs a little bit. So I think what teams are trying to do is they're getting one fella kind of to put pressure on him, and another person then to come in and close down that space that he might turn into. That's, to me, the only way you can mark him then and make him recycle the ball, really. But so the more you see of like David and that, the more you learn about his skill set. And okay, you can either panic or you can come up with ways to try to stop him properly, legitimately within the rules. So that's where we're at with him at the moment. And look, he'll respond to that too, I'd imagine. You'll see that he'll have to kind of come up with something else too, like to counteract that.
Yeah, I suppose. And I suppose, like, David Clifford, like Shane Walsh at the minute, like the way the game is at the minute, we always, like, I suppose the buzzwords, like the blanket defences, the mass defences, and everyone getting behind the ball. And do you feel maybe like that a lot of these players, the likes of Jeremy Connolly, or like lads willing to take chances, I suppose, do you feel some of them kind of guys are kind of lost in the game at the minute, and maybe there's players maybe sticking to systems, Colm?
I think there's two styles of blanket defences, right? I think there's a team that sets up to win the ball back from you and attack. And I think there's teams that set up to stop you scoring. So I really think that's in the game at the moment. I don't think there's anything wrong with fellas at times dropping back and you having 15 behind the balls, but then you have to watch how quickly they press off the shape, or quickly they put pressure on the middle zone. Okay, do they zonal mark box 3 and box 6? And what I mean by that is, right, if you have 15 behind the ball and you have a fullback and number 6 there, right, and they follow the men as they run in and out, you're going to leave huge gaps. And teams are aware of that. But if you're set up right and you have 15 behind the ball, but you leave a static man at 3 and a static man at 6, okay, you run you give the opposition the less chance of getting in on goals, right? So it depends, and the way teams analyse each other, they'll realise that this team is set up to stop us scoring, and I feel the teams that are set up to stop us scoring, right, are a bit naive in that they run after men and they leave gaps. So the likes of the talented players only need an inch or a fraction of a second to get the shot away, and what they do is they keep the ball recycling until they get them men into positions to shoot. So they bring the ball wide, they swing it from one side to the other. They'll even do what's called double swings, where they'll come back to the middle and go back the way they came. And the whole thing is trying to contract that defensive shape. But the teams that are set up right to counteract you are more clever. And what they really do is they don't budge. They let you make the mistake. And as soon as you make the mistake, they spot for the mistake. And I think that's where coaching's gone, defensive coaching's gone now. It's about coaching your players to spot the opposition making a mistake. And what I mean by that is, right, so if you're running across, swinging the ball, and you hand pass to me, but you put too much height in the ball, that I have to stop to catch it, you'll have 2 players out in that in the bullet, right? If the ball's played to your feet and you don't pick it up properly, they're on you all over you. So they're watching for you to make the mistake before they pounce, and then they counterattack really, really hard. So yeah, like teams are kind of really coming up with sort of systems to sort of break them defensive systems, but they're also analysing what type of defensive system you're putting in place. Is it just to keep the score down, or is it to get the ball back from you? And basically, them teams are teams that attack you with their defence. You know, now you look at now the amount of number 2s and number 4s that are getting up the field, and indeed number 3s sometimes getting on the end of the moves, and they're encouraged to shoot as well. So they're the ones that are being a bit proactive in that terms.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose we're hearing talk at the minute, obviously, like I said a couple of minutes ago, about the provincials, and obviously the Ulster final being the most competitive, I suppose, game out of the 4. Colm, like, I suppose the way that game was played, maybe a bit defensive, but it was intriguing. We didn't know who was going to win, kind of like last year, and obviously, like the way the Leicester final kind of panned out, the way the Connacht final panned out, the way the Munster final kind of panned out. So obviously, it probably is from a GAA fan kind of point of view, it's disappointing kind of watching on, but I don't know, like what's your opinion on all that? Maybe a need for change, or like are we just going to keep banging the same drum?
I don't think so. Like I'm reading there today, I didn't read fully now about these new changes that they're proposing, right? And like the one about the kickouts is really, really annoying, because like the kickouts are really, really now your bread and butter of football. Like you get your kick out away, you get your shot away now normally, right? So you're looking at your short kickouts, your mid kickouts, and your long kickouts, and the teams have all got strategies for that. And now the teams' kickout strategies are all based on your outfield players' movements. Like we've all seen them group in bunches, we've all seen them come in straight lines. We've seen the teams trying to counter by swarming around and all that. All this sort of stuff is fascinating. That was a brilliant rule that was brought in a couple of years back, where the keeper couldn't get the ball back. So kind of the kickouts, right? No matter what rules, John, the guys will throw at us, the coaches and the teams will adapt, you know, and you can see that in what's happened there at the moment. And look, I think if they did bring in that rule where you had to kick the ball by the 45, it might sort of, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it kind of a more of a sort of a battle out there, and that means that if you can't get all your kickouts away, you're not going to be sort of the dominant team. But it is for me at the moment. I love the kickout strategies, and the team that gets kickouts away is going to be sort of more successful. The team that gets their kickouts away and puts pressure and wins the opponent's kickouts, or as many of them as possible, are generally the teams that do well. So I don't think there's a lot wrong with it. I do think you're always going to have them sort of one way, you know, lopsided matches, the way the provincials are set up, but I still think they're worth portrayal, you know, sticking with, and I do think that teams value them, and I do think that teams are tactically trying to evolve a lot, you know, and so I wouldn't be really up for too much change, really, if that's what you mean.
I suppose from like the media and things, Colm, like I suppose what's your kind of take on maybe the Leinster kind of competition at the minute? Obviously Dublin won their 13th Leinster title in a row. I suppose, what's your take on all that?
Well, Kildare, I was at that game as well. Kildare ran them very, very close that day, and Kildare had a brilliant tactics in that. They really went defensive. See, previous year in the Leicester final, Dublin put 5 goals by Kildare, and the game was basically over in after 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And sure, we've been there as well with Meath. So I think Kildare were adamant that wasn't going to happen. So they went out and they deployed a tactical sort of game plan that worked, and really. Coming into the closing straight, Dublin only pulled away by 2 points. So that should have given them a huge amount of confidence to build on. If that had been the Leinster final, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be talking about, how either Dublin have come back or Kildare have progressed. So I do feel that Dublin focused heavily on Louth, because they probably felt from the National League match where they beat them by 7 points, they probably felt that they were the strongest team in the province, and they certainly had their homework done in terms of their matchups and the press and the kickouts. So Dublin do that for you, like they would do that, like they can, target teams like that and just dismantle you within minutes. That like they can do that. But so no, I think like Kildare will have to take great strength from that. Like they could have got a bit of luck there, and they could have beat them, and then we, as I said to you, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So you take, I know we've always said it, right, but if Dublin weren't kind of in that Leicester is very, very competitive, like, because a lot of teams are a similar, standard. So I'm not sure, really, to be honest with you, what's going on at Meath. I think what's happened basically is a few big guns have stopped. Like Brian Menton isn't playing this year. Conor McGill isn't playing this year, and like the two of them are massive, like massive fellas for Meath. They're good leaders, and like if you compare the likes of them to the Monaghan teams, which I'm full of admiration for, the older players in Monaghan who continually hang around, to sort of support the younger players going through, to give them sort of guidance. Like that's fantastic. And teams like Meath, Monaghan and Louth, now we can't really be getting rid of older players. We need the older players to keep, because that's the best way to blood your young players, in training with them, against them, watching them, being inspired by them. If they're not there in the dressing rooms, there's a big void to fill.
I suppose, Colm, would you kind of be off the opinion like it's the kind of high time, and I suppose like the last 13 years, but it seems very tough, but it's just kind of high time the likes of your Kildares and your Meads just up their game and I suppose try to get back to the standards of competing for Leinster Championships? Yeah,
I think that's kind of easy for us to say. Like I've been there for 4 years with Meath, and I see the work that they're doing, and there's great coaches there, and there's great commitment to bridge that gap. Like they put in place some big appointments. They have a full-time sort of football officer now. They've got a good amount of GPOs and GDAs. They're in the schools. They're really doing everything. One thing that they've certainly identified and are trying to rectify is, and Kildare have this. I think Kildare have this probably quicker than Meath. Under 17, the Kildare and Meath teams are as competitive with anybody. But 3 years later, when they meet at under 20s, there's a massive gap. So Dublin might come. You might beat a Dublin minor team at under 17s, and then when you meet them 3 years later, it's like two different teams. And it's like I think what Dublin do is they monitor probably up to about 200, 300 players at once, and they're on athletic programs. They have a template of what a half-back should look like, a midfielder should look like, and athletically they try to develop them like that. And they have a template, as I said, about what skill sets required. They would hold one-on-one training sessions, I think, with them. I think they do an awful lot of work like that to develop them. They're not rushing them through. They're kind of sort of guiding them along and kind of giving them guidance of this is what you need to be at, these are the numbers you need to get. And now that all comes down to resources, right? And that's where they have an advantage on everybody else. They can do that. Where I think the likes of Meath and Kildare and probably Louth, what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop everyone together by having sort of development squads. I'm talking about like under 19s and 20s and 21s, maybe under 23s and things like that, where I think their template is much, much better, where they can kind of sort of monitor everybody and sort of give them one-on-one work. So I think because they just arrive at different teams at 20 years of age, like probably same personnel, but higher skill set, definitely higher athleticism, all that sort of stuff. So they're the gaps that the teams have to try to bridge. But you can see Kildare seem to be doing that now at the minute. Like they've won like a couple of under-20s now, or been competing with under-20s for the last couple of years. So they obviously have targeted that. And I think Meath in fairness now, were competitive under-20s for the last 3 years as well. So they're beginning to target that and go down that route. So it might take a few years before you see it, John, but yeah, they could really, you would hope they could close that gap.
I suppose obviously Colm are in the Tatters Cup along with ourselves here, Cavan. I suppose, is it more just, I suppose, go try win that, I suppose, get back playing good football for Meath and put Meath football back on the map?
Well, for me it would be there's too many variables when it comes to winning championships. But what you should be targeting is certainly running it, because your confidence comes from small victories. Although they'd expect to be beaten Tipperary and Waterford, you do feel better about yourself when you get a couple of wins, and it allows you then. Your training's better. You're more receptive to the work you're going to do in training. There's a buzz around training because it's always better than winning. It's very, very difficult to constantly go in and coach a team when you're getting beaten and hammered. And it's very hard to kind of say to players, trust the process. Stick to what we're trying to do. But when you get a few small victories, or when you get victories like that, you're more open to what you're doing in training and things like that, and more receptive to some of the ideas. And then you start suggesting ideas yourself, and the thing kind of flows from that. So I would imagine that they will be targeting a run for that. And you'd like to see, you've got some big teams there in terms of Cavan, Down, Meath. You'd like to see them teams coming through, and it would be a brilliant championship, say from quarterfinal, semi-final on. That would be very, very competitive, and they would all like to win it, because Westmeath certainly got a great bounce out of winning the Tatters Cup last year. And where the bounce is there, John, is, as I said, you all them kids watching it and all them kids inspired and wanting to wear the Westmeath jersey. That's the thing that you get from that. And if you have that sort of continuity of these lads turning up to their clubs and wanting to play Gaelic football for Westmeath, it can only do you good.
I suppose obviously some of the chat in recent weeks and months about Meath football, and obviously Colm O'Rourke has probably been very, I suppose, honest and vocal in his views about where Meath kind of football is at. I suppose, are you on the same wavelength as Colm?
Oh, well, like as I said, I done 4 years with him, right? And we got to the Super 8s in 2019 and got promoted to Division 1. So then the pandemic hit, which that hit for everybody. But you certainly felt a couple of years ago that Meath were on this sort of upward trajectory, sort of as such. And even what people forget, in 2021 we were beaten by Kildare to go back up to Division 1. So for about 3 years they were knocking on the door in Division 1, out of Division 1, back a chance to get back up to Division 1. So it's kind of alarming to see sort of the form dip like that. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get a bounce with a new manager, and sometimes the bounce goes the other way. But I do believe that he means well, and I do believe that he has his own ideas. It'll take a little while for that to do, because a lot of personnel has moved on, and that has a big impact. As I mentioned, the two lads earlier on, experienced fellas like that can do the world of good if you have a sort of a youngish fullback or a midfielder. The information and the tips that these boys can give them fellas are invaluable. And if you lose that, it could be a little while before you develop you could be kind of stunting or slowing the development of these lads, where they could have kind of helped it, be done quicker.
I suppose, Colm, obviously you have skin in the game, being involved in a county setup. It's easy for people to just maybe see on podcasts or on a bar stool or chatting to their friends, like the work that goes on behind the scenes, and it just goes. A lot of it can be, I suppose, a lot of nonsense talk at times, Colm. So, do you feel a lot of maybe the criticism can be a bit harsh at times?
Yeah, look, it is. Look, I played for a while there, right? And what you used to have is your local newspapers that might criticize you, right? And then now with social media and stuff like that, it's incredible. Forums and things like that. Look, it doesn't matter. I was involved with Louth for a couple of years with Colin Kelly, and then, as I said, with Meath with Andy McAfee, and all them players. You're basically putting your life on hold, right? They really, the efforts that these lads are putting in is phenomenal, right? And the training has changed. Up to teams are now out maybe 5 days a week, right? They have shape sessions, they have recovery sessions, they have their weight sessions, they have and the weight sessions are group sessions. That's another day. Then they have their probably 2 pitch sessions along with a match. So that's 5, probably 6 sessions. It's really, really huge commitment, right, that these lads are putting in. It's probably, in fact, too much in my eye. I think we train too much in terms of the games to ratio to training, and where the club is a little bit more manageable. Inter-county, you kind of feel you have to do it because you're missing out.
Yeah.
But everyone else is doing it, you know, and these players are all mixed in colleges and things like that, and they'll be all telling stories that we're doing this and we're doing that, and you sort of then sense the players feel, well, if we're not doing this, we're not prepping right and we're not prepping up to speed. But you know, it is what it is at the moment, and you just have to kind of try your best to keep players fresh, to keep them motivated, to keep them interested, you know, and keep them tuned in. And that's what I kind of always like to do in terms of my training. You'll be doing a lot of repetition, but you'll be doing it through different exercises and things like that, just to try to keep fellas sort of engaged, that they arrive down and saying, what are we doing tonight? Are we doing that and exciting tonight? Are we doing that and different tonight? And, you know, and you have to put a lot of like context on certain training sessions. You could be 2 days out from a match and you'll do a lot of unopposed shooting, which all the experts tell you is no good to anybody. But the last thing you want is me running into you and giving you a dead leg and you can't play on Sunday.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you have to factor in a lot of that sort of stuff as well. And then if you are meeting 3 or 4 or 5 nights a week, you know, you can't go fully intense for the whole 3 or 4 nights a week as well. You have to be a little bit of sort of where you're minded the players and looking after them as well.
I suppose kind of last question regarding this, Colm, like what is your take maybe on the commitment that county is bringing to a lot of lads' life?
Yeah, well, I think, like, I mean, we only had to read or listen to Kevin McStay's comments there recently about him giving 2 weeks off to the Mayo players after they lost to Roscommon because they had a 5-6 week break, and that's a brave call, but it's probably the right call because fellas will respond back to you and give you loads. So I think what a lot of the top teams do, they can kind of periodize their planning and they can kind of aim to peak at certain times. So that gives them a distinct advantage that they don't have to go flat out early on, where if you're trying to close that gap, you're trying to kind of do as much training as possible, get as fit as possible as early, get tactically aware, you're trying to get all that sort of stuff done, where the top teams might only be ramping up now. And even like when you think about it, like Kerry lost the first match there against Mayo, I don't think they're going to be panicking. I think they're going to be saying, well, we have enough still to get us into the group. It's only in a few weeks we need to be at our best. So they have an advantage of that. And I think they're now at it where they're probably at the 4 or 5 nights a week and fully tuned in now, where the teams trying to bridge the gap might have been doing that for a long time. So they're getting probably fatigued about it. So it's about getting that periodization right, really. And so it's tough, but I personally feel there's an awful lot of probably too much training at it county. But you won't stop unless everybody stops. You
know? Yeah, interesting stuff. Colm, so who wins the Tatters Cup and All Ireland in your opinion?
I think Cavan would win the Tatters Cup. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think the target in it, which is great. I think they've come through a tough like they've got the promotion. They've come through a tough championship in terms of like I think they're very disappointed with the performance against Armagh. It looked like. See, this is the thing. You'd be like, this is why it's fascinating, right? I'd say their plans. You could kind of see what the plans were to keep the ball. They knew Armagh were going to drop behind the ball, work it into certain areas, and pull the trigger. But they just seemed to shoot from so far out for so long, right? And you know, they weren't getting the shooters in the ball. They seemed to be kind of taking shots from well outside the scoring zone. Some went over, majority didn't. Lost a little bit of confidence in themselves, probably. And I'd say they're hugely disappointed. I'd say they didn't execute the game plan that they worked on and they talked about. So that's why the Tatters Cup is brilliant. Then gives you a chance of redemption. And like, you know, these lads aren't silly. Like, they know, like, if they had got that right. Like, I know Armagh went down there quite fearful because they hadn't beaten Cavan and Breffni in a long, long time. You know, so for them to get a victory in there, like, they really valued that victory and they got a good shot in the arm out of that. So vice versa, I think Cavan there will have enough to sort of they'll want this, they'll target this. Now they'll be looking at the likes of Meath and Down, and they'll be looking at them sort of teams and saying, do you know what, they're going to be difficult to beat, and that's what you want. You don't want to win an easy championship. The All Ireland, I think Dublin will win it. I think like the team that started against Louth was possibly the best Dublin team that Dublin put out in 2 or 3 years. With Jack McCaffrey starting, they did Brian Howard back playing along with Paul Mannion. And I think that's certainly the strongest team on paper. And again, Stephen Cluxton back, who makes a massive difference to them. There's a feeling there I get is that they know the good players coming and are constantly developing, but they want another All Ireland. They want another All Ireland. They want to make a statement, you know, and so they're really pushing that. So I think I've seen things like look. Every team has what's called non-negotiables, and it came from a rugby term that I heard years and years ago about. I think it was Joe Schmidt asked about. Yeah, okay.
Well, not Dan Carter didn't say that, no, or was it Richie McCaw? No.
No, it was. I maybe I was lucky enough to be in sort of presence of him a couple of times, and then he was asked a question about how do you make sure, right, your players are going to put the same effort in against the All Black as they do, let's say, against Fiji, right? So what the question was basically asking was how do players motivate themselves? Like, they know you're playing the All Blacks, you're going to be pinned to your collar.
Yeah.
If you're playing a team that you're expected to beat, it's harder to motivate yourself. And he said, simple, they have a series of non-negotiables. And one of the non-negotiables would be things like they would be measuring the leg drive and the rucks and stuff like that. Are they putting the same power in as the rucks and scrums as they would against All Blacks against Fiji? So they could measure that through whatever GPSs and things like that. So it's the exact same with Gaelic football right now. It's these non-negotiables. Are they running hard? And I seen Dublin, right, against Louth. Every time the ball was kicked out long, they had 3 or 4 players in around the break in a flash, right? Really, really quickly. Now you might say that's obvious, but teams don't do that all the time. They were really committing huge numbers in, and the timing of it and the sequence of how they got in was really, really good. And they were flooding these areas that these boys hadn't a chance even to think. Before they blinked, there were 3 or 4 blue jerseys around them, harrying them and hassling them and taking the ball off them and breaking, right? So doing things like that, I didn't see that to date. So, you didn't see them little things they were doing today. Like the ball had been kicked out against Kildare, and it was 1v1s. They weren't getting underneath. They weren't committing to it and stuff like that. So little things like that tell me that they're ramping it up, that they're focusing up, and they're getting ready for bigger challenges ahead.
Yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. I suppose if there was a top 3 or top 5 players in the country at the minute, who's exciting you?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's great to see Paul Mannion back, but for me, like, from a Dublin point of view, Jack McCaffrey, right, he's the game changer, right? Like, I've seen him like against Louth in the league and again in the championship, and the way he's just so direct, he gets the ball. Like, we were up at the Dublin Clare match, and Clare had a brilliant game against them in the National League. They brought Jack on, changed the whole game. Simply, like, I mean, it's a compliment when I say this. Like, he doesn't mark anybody. He just takes up his number 5 position or number 7 position, and he goes, right? And basically what he makes you do is you have to mark him or someone else marks him. He's getting on the end of moves. He's starting moves. He's giving and going. He's making decoy runs. He's running to the end line and turning. He's just causing chaos. So that's brilliant. I'm enjoying again. I think I'd like to see. I thought Paddy Clifford got an awful smack against Aidan O'Shea in the second match that had to affect him. Really, like, he was very brave to continue on and play, but he's another player that's coming really like into his own in terms of a playmaker. So I'd love to see a playmaker. I'd love to see what he's looking for. I'd love to see how he transitions the ball out of his defence and trying to get the ball up to his brother as quick as possible. And that's fast forward finish football, right? Which is their style, and that's if you want to break your blanket defences and that, you have to do that. So look, there's nothing exciting there in terms of new. It's kind of old school or established players, but like that's what makes the championship for me is seeing them boys in their pomp and a full flow.
Brilliant stuff, Colm. Few questions in from the viewers, if you wouldn't mind answering them. So the first question is it occasionally frustrating, I suppose, the drop in skill levels coaching between intercounty and club level?
I don't think so, right? I think like, we've all come from clubs, and look, there's a kind of feeling out there now that and I think Seamus Quigley alluded to it in one of his podcasts, that it's athletes now that are playing the game. So it's not necessarily like drop a skill. What they do, I think, at county level is to perform skills and to play the game at a quicker tempo than to do a club. But some of the skills at club level, to me, is just as good. So no, I don't find that frustrating, because like, one of the pieces of advice when I'm ever asked, I give to coaches is to coach at every level. Right, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. Like, sometimes I still go down and when I get a chance and help out in my club and the juveniles and things like that. Now, I probably wouldn't have the patience to do it anymore. Like, I came through coaching all the underage and kids like that. But it's good to do that every now and again, and it's good because it gets you back to your basics. It gets you back to coaching the skill of the game. And ultimately, as you mentioned earlier on, if you can get the basics brilliant, right, all the rest will come. And so, like, little things like, I mean, I use terminology like you have an A side and a B side. Your A side is your strong side. and your B side is the side that you want to develop, right? It's getting that language right and helping players along. Practice your B side, focus on your A side for tonight, and in this game you're going to focus on your B side and stuff like that. So you're always looking to improve players. Even though when I'm coaching club teams, senior teams, we still do an awful lot of work on sort of bilateral skills, left side, right side, and trying to kind of lower the bar, as I mentioned earlier on, about you don't have to be as good with your right foot as your left foot, whatever your strongest, but you need to be able to use it, stuff like that. So there's still lots of players in at county level that can't use both sides. The way county football has gone at the moment, right, is if you watch most matches there now, there's majority of them are athletes first half, and with 20 minutes to go, they bring on the footballers. And so there's a starting team and a finishing team. And a lot of teams are doing that because the game is just 100 miles an hour for about 50 minutes. And then you watch, it doesn't matter, even the Armagh area match, you name any game that's tight, it's just compelling viewing with 20 minutes to go. Because players have got tired, mistakes happen. The clever coaches are bringing on the finishers, who are the footballers, who are the guys that are perceived to be, better than that. So, so that's way, like that's brilliant. So if you are a slight underdog, you're saying to your group, you put your athletes, let's call them on, and you say, stay in the game until 20 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, and that's when it really happens,
Yeah, you're Sean Quigley, I suppose, as the aforementioned Sean Quigley. I'm presuming you probably have mum's the word for this particular question, but here we go. What app are you creating your tweets with?
I just use a Word document. What I do is simple. It's just a simple Word document, right? And snip it into it. I think it's called a PNF, and that's how I tweet that. Now, look, like everything else, I can remember, like, when I started doing this, it was tweeting games and stuff like that. There was nobody doing it, right? I mean it. There was nobody doing it, and I always had this idea that was a great platform. I'd love to share some ideas, because do you know what happens? To keep what you have, there's a saying there: to keep what you have, you got to give what you got. So the amount of people like that would come back to me and say, "Hey, did you ever see this game? Would you try this? Would you do that?" It's like I've got so much from sharing these ideas, and even there, like the YouTube channel that I have there, we're very close to having 1 million views on that, which is amazing. Like for a bespoke sort of, for just a Gaelic football. There's girls, there's ladies football on it. There's nursery ideas. There's training. There's individual things, right? And it started off as a way to store all that sort of stuff, because my laptop was coming full and stuff like that. But there's almost 1 million views on that. I'd say before the year's out, there's 1 million views on that, which is incredible, really. Like, and so the Twitter thing just started like that. And I look back at some of the things I used to tweet at the start. So, holy jeez, compared to now. But the whole idea, it's done in the right way, John. I feel I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I just have to stress that it's just a few ideas, and you're hoping people kind of, would just kind of get a little bit of inspiration from it and say, look, I just like a few ideas to do. A lot of them will come back with their own ideas. Now there's 10 and penny ideas. I actually don't do it as much now because of that. I said there's loads out there. You're saturated, and people get fed up listening to you now. So I don't tweet as much as I used to, really, because of that.
Yeah. All information is always very helpful, Colm, I find. Another one, how can a team recapture momentum after a few big opposition power plays? Right.
So for me, that is a thing called survivor mode, right? So if you think about it, right, like this happens a couple of times, right? If you're winning well, right, if you're winning by 5 or 6 points, you notice then the team coming at you hard and hard and hard, right? Yeah. That's because you've gone into what's called survivor mode, right? You're trying to see the game out, which is very, very difficult to get out of, because what happens there is, like, you're trying to see the game out. There could be 6 minutes left, which is a long time in Gaelic football, right? And again, you've lost all momentum. So it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing when the power plays come against you, when you've conceded heavily, right? So what you need to do is that there has to be a leader on the pitch that resets you. There has to be a call, like one of the simple calls there. You remember the Dublin teams would put their hands in the air, or you'd have teams call and keep it green, keep it this. And what that's basically saying is just get your hand on the ball, keep the ball moving for a little while, okay, till you build up your momentum and confidence again. And here's the thing about confidence, right? I say this a lot to a lot of players. The way your brain and mind works, right, is if you go out and you're playing centre half forward, and you get a ball on the sideline, and you spin and you go to kick it over the bar and you kick it a mile wide, your confidence dips a little bit. So you have to recognize that your confidence has dipped a little bit there, and you have to do something to get your confidence back up. So you're not going to get your confidence back up if you try that shot again. You get your confidence back by getting your hand on the ball, making a simple hand pass 5 or 6 yards, and then your brain starts kind of sending signals that you're back in this, you're back in this, you're back in this, and you build your confidence back up gradually and slowly. And that's the exact same what a team has to try to do when there's a few power plays against them. Secure your kick out, keep the ball moving, okay? Even if you worked it up and got a simple score, that's the team starts breathing again as one and building their confidence again. But for that to happen, you have to have kind of, I won't say discussed it or planned it, but you have to have done some sort of work in training for that. That when this happens, this is what we do, right? And we build our confidence back up like that. You know, so it's both individual and sort of collective. And again, the survivor mode for me is very, very important. And what survivor mode is a team they've secured their lead, and then they've gone away from doing everything that they did to get that lead, right? Do you know?
Yeah.
So, and that's very hard to. That's a psychological thing, and that's very hard. Like, it doesn't matter what, like, telling doesn't work, right? Our job is done. If you might be a coach on a team, you see a team that happened at your team, you can't change that. The players have to change that. Somebody has to get the depth back up. Somebody has to, get the width. Somebody has to do that. Somebody has to identify that they've gone away from what was doing it. It's like, look, I don't know, we're all different, but it's like when the team gets a 2-point lead and then concedes every kicking and gives the opposition, like teams, like most teams, as I said, at the county level, you secure your kick out. It doesn't matter if it's by the 21-meter line or the 45. You're probably going to get shot away. Things like that. So look, everyone's different, and everyone has different sort of principles and beliefs.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I have to say that was sent in. With modern mass deep defenses, how many minimum up top do you like to retain?
Well, I think, right, and look, that's a great question. I love talking about this, right? And you go to matches, and here's one for you. Like, if a team drops their 14 outfield players into their own half, right? It's simple mathematics. You can't send 10 to break that down, right? You have to send your 14 to break it down. Simple as. So what happens then is the game becomes 15v15 almost in one half the pitch, right? So ideally, like, what I would like to do with all my teams is try to keep 3 up. But they're all told straight away, try to hold your shape in certain formations and whatever. Like, there's lots of different formations you can line that 3 out in. But if the opposition join the attack, you have to go with them. So you end up with your 15 against 15 behind the ball. Now, if you can keep them back, right, what normally happens there, John, is, right, a lot of other coaches will not allow 3 1v1s. They'll leave a +1 there. So that gives you an extra defender then when you're defending, right, for your attacks and things like that. So it's about, players have to identify that. So I would like to leave as much as possible 3 players up, right, when we're defending, and we defend then hopefully from around the centre field, not dropping back really, really deep. So you're kind of making a game in the middle park, right? But if they decide to send their 3 players up, you have to kind of, your 3 forwards then join it, so you end up to 15 against 15. But here's one for you now, and that what happens then as well is when a team sends their 15 players to break you down, what teams are doing there, they're getting very clever, is they'll get a forward to come in and out the pitch and behind the last defender. So that stops the team swinging the ball left and right. And you see a lot of teams doing that. So he's like kind of there that if you're in the middle, you're the conductor, you're ready for your teammates to pass the ball to you. But he stands behind you, right? So now your teammates get the ball and they don't like to use you because they can see the man right behind you. Now, he's not in front of you, he's behind you. Right, so that's very, very clever positioning of players, and a lot of teams are doing that. So you even seen against Derry, right, when Derry sent their goalkeeper up, Armagh left the player behind him, and they couldn't use that goalkeeper half as much for swinging the ball and moving the ball because he was there ready to pounce on a mistake or cut a bad pass out. So it just changes the dynamic of your kind of attack, because an awful lot of teams are so well drilled when it comes to swinging the ball, getting the pace off the line, having their wall pass player on the D, all that sort of stuff. And that all hinges on you moving the ball from one side to the other as quick as possible. But by you placing that player there, you can't swing that ball, so you have to play down that line. So it's all really fascinating, that end of it. But to answer your question, I tried to leave 3 up, but they're drilled, or I won't say drilled, but they're informed that they're only there if the defenders are marking them.
Oh yeah, perfect. Mead fan sent this one in. I think it's a bit of frustration behind this one, but Colm, every Mead club team seem to have excellent facilities. Has this focus seen a shortage on coaching on the flip side, which now sees Mead at Grade 2 Championship?
I do have a belief that there's not enough coaching going on in the clubs. And and what I mean by that is, right, I when I started out involved in coaching and the development squads, every county had development squads. The development squads were really only meant to train 1 day a month. Okay, and they were to bring you in, and now they've blossomed, right, and that they're training so much now that the clubs aren't coaching the players as much. To me, the coaching has to be done in the club as much as possible. And I also have a bit of a problem with, I think we've replaced the under 12 and 13 going with a bag of balls down the field with sort of conditioning work and S&C work. Like, so instead of going down with a bag of balls like we all used to do and spend hours kicking the ball out of the bar or soling up and down the field, we're not doing that as much, right? And because the kids have so much on in terms of they're playing other codes, they're in school, if they're on the development squads, they have to get probably a stretching session in, a running session in, and all that sort of stuff. So the parents are saying, you need to study. You can't go down there to kick the ball. And every player, you listen to all the stories of all the great players that we've witnessed all through the years, even down to the lads we're talking about here today, David, Clifford, and that. They spend hours in the field kicking the ball around with their brothers and their friends and stuff, unopposed, unstructured training.
Yeah.
There's not enough of that going on at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
I'd love to see that back. And even like if you think about it, right, if you have a bag of balls, like we have a bag of 15 O'Neill's balls here, and I have 3 boys, and for years they went down to the fields and are out in the green, and they learn how to kick with the outside of the boot, the instep, and explore all them things, right, themselves. Right? And that's the best skills that you inherit. That's the best skills that they can get by developing them themselves. I just feel that we're knocking that out of players now. There's too much structure about it, right? So I'd like to see clubs kind of doing more games, like the game is the best training going, more games, and encourage that they have as much chance to kind of do some individual training themselves, just kicking around. That's what I do with the lads sometimes. And the videos, we're just sharing ideas. Like I go down there sometimes, and it's them telling me what they want to do. I say, what do you do? What do we do today? Can we do a little bit of practice with a little bit of pressure on the shooting or this, that, and the other? So they're telling me what they want, and I just kind of trying to share that, give the lads ideas on the videos and that, you know.
Yeah, perfect Colm, I suppose. Last 2 here. Any movement tips for a half forward to achieve separation and get a kick pass into space?
Yeah, like the most important thing would be, again, right, for me, would be to watch the top class players. Like when I remember years ago, we played Kerry in a challenge when we were at Meath, and like I keep making the point that I'm a fan of the game. I remember chatting on the bus to Mickey Newman, who was one of Meath's best forwards for years, and he said, Colm, did you notice how every Kerry forward performed a trick before he plays the ball? You know, and we took that into our training, into our warm-ups, where we tried to build in dummy solos, dummy hops. So I would say to that player there, yeah, if you can kind of perform a trick, right, again, if you can master a dummy solo or a dummy bounce, you know, or a spin or a roll like that buys that little bit of separation, you know, and like a dummy solo to yourself. But the dummy solos, like, again, if you watch kids doing dummy solos, like I have for trying to say, you have to commit as if you're going to kick the ball, and at the last minute you change your mind, that sort of stuff, and buy yourself that tiny little bit of room, and then that allows you to get the pass. But what I do there as well, John, I would coach the flip side of that as well. And I really believe now that, like the way defending and that's gone, like you're only allowed to tackle the ball, right? And like any sort of contact should be a foul, like the hand on the back, shoulder to shoulder is allowed, but all the rest has to be towards the ball. So if you try your best to get your hand on the ball or whatever it is, that's the only tackling that's really allowed. I think an awful lot of teams coach sweat boxes and things like that. And they're just fouling. They're just coaching fouling, pushing and shoving. Fella fall on the ground and next his knees are on the back. Like they're all fouls. We're coaching a lot of fouls. So what I'm trying to do now with smaller kids now is coach the use of your hands, because like it's a big thing in basketball, but when a team is swinging a basketball from one side to the other, the coaches or the players are out trying to block the passing channels or the passing alleys, and that's when you wave your hands. So if you have the ball, right, you're out performing a trick, you're looking inside, and next you see my hand coming across your face, you're going to pull the ball back because you're not sure what you see in there, and that's a form of defending.
Yeah,
you know, and I love now watching games, right, and you see no teams doing that. No teams are out. Like, okay, if you rush into a fella and he does a dummy solo and trick, he's around you. But if you kind of just maintain that distance, you know he's not going to try to beat you. If you have your hands waving and moving, you're blocking his vision for his passing, and that's brilliant defending too. You know, so there's lots of ways to coach that. So, what to answer that question, right? there's two sides to everything. So if you're coaching a player to buy a little bit of separation by doing a bit of a trick, I'd also be coaching the defender to kind of block his passing channels, that if he does buy that trick, that you might just wave your hand in his face and he can't see the pass, you know.
Yeah, no, it's all very, very interesting. Colm, was last one. What shape does your team press opposition restarts on aggressively?
I think right. So I think that's very, very difficult to coach, right? And so what like my sessions and the work I've done there has evolved down through the years. That again, it depends what level you're working at. So I mentioned earlier on that about your tactical and your mental. So your tactical is the likes of that, pressing on opposition's kickouts. So how long do you dedicate to that, right? Do you just go through it in on a clipboard or a flip chart or your tactics table, right? You have to do it out in the football field. So number one, if you don't have 30 training, it's difficult to replicate the whole lot, right? So what we do is this, right? I try to kind of get the teams that I'm coaching involved. Like, I really believe that if I'm coaching the Newtown Blues under 16s and we're playing, let's say, Termafeckin under 16s, right? I don't know any of these players, right? But the players know each other. So I get the players to come up with some sort of tactics. And I always ask them to tell me a little bit of information on the goalkeeper, right? And from there, we do a little bit of work on that in training. So they might turn around and say, he doesn't like kicking to the right side. So what we'll do then is we'll say, right, we will try to make him kick to the right side. So you do that in training. How do you make them do it? So I think the players hold an awful lot of keys. Like even your own club, if you're playing, it doesn't matter what level you're playing, they know each other better than we know them. You know, so I always encourage players to come up with a little bit of analysis on the opposition, only 2 or 3 paragraphs. And again, I asked them to include sort of the kickouts. And from that, we try to work a little bit in training level. And what you find really there is the information that a lot of teams give you back is exactly that. He doesn't like kicking to his left side. So you might then overload the right side, forcing him to kick to the left. Little things like that, you know. Or he likes to kick the ball long, so you might kind of work on a little bit of breaking ball for when the ball is kicked in. So for me, you have to do that every single night. If you're looking to put an aggressive press up in 4 in the full forward line, 4 in the half forward line, and 4 in the midfield, like what Dublin did against Leicester, you need to practice that in training. You need to go through that about 10 minutes every single night to do that. And that all comes down to numbers, and that all comes down to games. But again, some keepers can kick out over the press, and that's where your analysis comes in. If you know who you're playing and you know a little bit about the keeper, it goes back to what we talked about at the very, very start here. The keeper now is nearly the most important position on the football field, you know. So it's great having all these strategies. I kind of like at a level, I won't say I shy away from that because it's difficult to coach, and it means that you have to spend about 10 minutes every night. And then if you think about it, you're trying to find your 10 minutes for your kickouts. You're trying to come up with your strategy. Before you know it, you've got 40 minutes of your session gone. Really. So it's about picking and choosing what you can and can't do. And go back to what you mentioned about the county teams, that's what they would probably do in their 5 sessions a week. They would probably, when they're doing a shape session, it's probably all the work they're doing is pressing the kickouts, their kick-out movement. So they don't have to do that on a Tuesday and a Thursday, let's say. But with other clubs, you're trying to pack. If you try to pack too much, you lose something, you know.
Yeah. Great stuff, Colm. Hopefully that's all them questions answered to a T, and of course the way your answer to a T. Great answers, Colm. Much appreciated for your answers. So what's life looking for you like these days, Colm? Are you coaching, managing teams, and busy?
Yeah, well, the coach education season's just finished, like which I that sort of runs from March to or October to March type of thing. And look, there's great clubs and committees out there and counties trying to upskill the coaches. I don't even mean upskill. Look, there's nothing better than going to a workshop. I love going to workshops myself and learn. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was down with the Tyrone ladies in Ardmore and Gaelic Field, which was brilliant. And before that, I was down in Longford, and Conley Gilligan was on ahead of me, and I went down early and sat in the stands and robbed all his ideas. You know, but like that's what we do, and so I love doing the likes of that, right? But I feel like the best way really is the way it's evolved at the minute is like even from the coach education, we've moved away from sort of theory based to more practical based education, because that's the best way. And not only that, you're watching the interaction between the players, you're watching sort of the communication skills of the coach, as well as all the content, as well as all the rapport. But I think more and more counties and clubs are kind of asking for sort of specifics. Can we get a workshop on this? Can we get a workshop on that? Where generally it was just come down and do a session, you know. So people are looking for more specific information. I'm still involved in my club, Newtown Blues. I kind of help them out sort of behind the scenes, and I'm coaching Silverbridge in Armagh at the moment. So really enjoying that. They're a smashing club, and you know, very, very keen. And that's the best buzz you can get, is when you arrive down training and fellas just want to learn and want to sponge. And what I mean by learn from themselves. Like what I try to do is kind of say, like, one of my favorite questions is, what do you think? Right? And after a few weeks, fellas start telling you what they think, where they never open them out at the start, but when they realize that you're doing it for the right reason, because ultimately coaching and managing is a two-way marriage, right? So like they feel what's happening, we see what's happening. So anything I suggest or anything I'm telling them is based on what I see, but I have to know what they're feeling out there. Like, I mean, like you might be saying, why is that halfback going up there all the time? And they might say, because he switched him, or blah, blah, or he's quick, or he's this, that, and the other. You know, so you might think it's obvious, but you have to ask the players that, and you have to create an environment where they're comfortable telling you what they feel. And look, I've never had any issue with players coming over to me on the sideline saying, look, this body's after making that. I've been on the sideline for years, John, and I always say this to fellas, right? There's been times you're standing there on the sideline and the fella will tap you on the shoulder and say, their number 12's asked score on 3 points. And you say, Jesus, did he? Didn't even notice it. Like, you know, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and like, so you want an environment where people are comfortable talking and sharing that type of information. Or like the famous one is where someone comes to you and say, we're in trouble at full back. And you're kind of saying, well, I know that. Rather than come and say, would you not try such and such at 6 and such and such?
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to create an environment. And if you have no ego in terms of that, people will come to you. You know, like I've never anybody. I'm talking about within the circle between your coaches and your players. I've never any problem coming, fellas saying, look, we're in trouble here, or I think this is a problem here and that. And, you know, because the more sets of eyes working to the one common goal has to work.
Yeah, absolutely, Colm. I suppose what's your thinking? Obviously, you've been involved with loads of teams, Colm. What's your thinking on like the WhatsApp culture at the minute? Like, are you happy the way it's kind of going at the minute?
Well, yeah. Look, it's again, right. I'm at a certain age where I wouldn't be sort of au fait with social media, although I'm on social media. But as I said to you, I would use I use it for content and not comment. There's one, I always make sure that I'm only in one WhatsApp group. So in terms of the teams I'm involved with, so I know players have all numerous WhatsApp groups and that, but I'm only in the one for sharing information, right? So again, you share your meeting times and things like that. But what I believe is I love the WhatsApp now for putting up your work-ons. So every match is videoed now. So what I like to do is I just go through the matches myself, right? And I'll decide where I want to put the positives out. Like, so sometimes I just put a 3-minute clip of stuff that was really, really good on the WhatsApp. I love that. Then I kind of put what I call the work-ons. I won't say the mistakes or the stuff went bad, but like we played a match there recently and we created 6 goal chances and didn't take any of them. So rather than give out the players, I was kind of saying, look, this is how close we are and this is the stuff we need to work on and train. We call them work-ons. So you're kind of getting both sides of the message, but you're not kind of firing a hammer. So I love that way of communication. It's great for sharing information on things like we put out all our nutrition, kind of our loading plans and all that up and that 3 days before our matches, and that you get that out there. It's a great way of hitting everybody. But you know, for me, what it does is, right, I'm a big believer, right, with the clubs I'm with, like, less meetings, more training. So you can nearly have your meetings or the points that you want to get across in meetings on the WhatsApp. You know, so I only use that for that. Like, so if you get me, like, so, you know, you have to have some sort of tactical meetings and you have to have some of that sort of stuff. But fellas get fed up. I don't know about you, but I used to hate sitting in meetings. Like at my time when I played, we were putting video cassettes into televisions to watch matches. Fellas the coaches were stopping it, fast forward and stuff. Go on for hours.
Yeah.
You know, I'd much rather have my 90 minutes on the pitch. I think that's where you'll make the biggest gains. So I use the WhatsApp to sort of replace the meetings and the analysis, if you get me. You know, and so far so good, fellas. As I said, there is time you do need.
Is the feedback good when you put in the stuff in the videos and all? Yeah.
Well, I do, and a little bit of discussion and stuff like that. And look, what we do is, like, and every team does it, right? They have access to the full video, right? But I just pick out my coaching points that I want them to kind of look at, and more times than not, the positives. I'm a big believer in reinforcing the positives rather than the negatives. You know, and so again, I'd be kind of picking out the stuff that we've done really well and trying to kind of reinforce that first before we even attempt to look at something that we're not doing well, because it takes something like, I don't know if it's as exact as this, but it takes 28 positive comments to undo one negative comment, and that's the exact same from watching negative stuff being, you know, phrased as bad tackling, bad catching, blah, blah, blah. Instead of we put it on as work on, it's like, we need to work on this. Like, your time is a little bit off. How can we get that better? You know, things like that. So, for instance, midfielders, what we do is we have things like arrival activities, just simple rebounders, where I'd say to the midfielders, you have to catch 20 balls off this rebounder before we even go out in the field. And my thinking behind that is quite simply, over the course of a week, that's 100 catches that he wouldn't have got. Because your keeper's not going to kick the ball out to you 100 times pre-warm up, right? So you create an environment where players can work on stuff like that they want to just get you a little bit of self-confidence. Get your eye in, get your timing in, get your sort of your spring, leading off your left foot, leading off your right foot, you know, stuff like that. So doing that in an environment where it's phrased as learning and reinforcing.
Brilliant stuff, Colm. Brilliant stuff. So, very last question: what advice would you give to any kind of young aspiring coaches out there?
Well, for me, as I said, I think that they should coach as much as possible, right? With coach any teams that you can, right? Because you learn so much from them. Whatever. I remember years ago, the Loud Hurlers were in between managers, and they were trying to get going, and did nobody to do a session for them. And I was asked to do a session, and we done it with tennis balls, right? You know, with the hurls and stuff like that. But I learned so much then about sort of not being organised or having a plan B for training. Like many times have you gone down training and the club men will say the pitch is closed tonight, you know, and you can have a corner and that. So I'd always have a sort of a plan B of a session ready for, especially in bad weather and stuff like that. So again, you learn that. So I would coach as many different levels as possible, even down from kids to nursery level to boys to girls, anything as much as possible. Even though you have the dads over 40s, you've got the mums, all that sort of stuff. Like, because they're only there for fun. They reinforce when you go down doing a session for the likes of them. They're only there for fun. They know a bit of crack. They don't want to be the best footballer in the park. They don't want to be the fittest person. They want to smile and they want to laugh. And that's brilliant too, because it brings you back down to basics. We're a community-based organisation. We're here about providing games in a safe environment and including everybody. So coach everything, I would say, in your club. Ask, can you do the mums, the dads and lads, or whatever it is, the nursery, just get a feel for it in that way. And then you hone your skills, your communication skills, you know, you how to sort of, you know, spot and act in terms of, if you can't do a dummy solo, right, which I couldn't, I have to make sure I noticed that John can do a dummy solo. I say, John, will you show the lads how to do a dummy solo and stuff like that, right? So you learn that from coaching all different age groups and all different things. So that's the advice I'd say to anybody. Coach as much as you can within your club at any level.
Colm, Nally, I think that could be the podcast of the year, and I'm not just saying that. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Loads of nuggets in that. Colm, Nally, well-renowned GAA coach, thanks a million for joining me this week. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by yourgretsch.com. You record to podcast to get 15% off on the website. Get your hands on Colm's book. Loads of nuggets. Get your hands on it. Colm, thank you very much.
Thanks a million, John.